I see we forgot to shave then, Roger, before we came on the programme.
Both of us.
I know.
It's not a good year for actors. You know, the money you pay in taxes, you can't afford raises.
Is this all part of the new role, as it were?
Well, in aspects, I'm going to play a man who goes from over 60 to nearly 80. And I figured it was easier to cover my chin with hair than sort of put hanging jowls.
Actually, I have to say, I didn't know you could sing.
Not many people do. Well, I once sang in pantomime, playing King and Jack and the Beanstalk. And my big fear was, you know, sort of when this came up to sing, was how am I going to remember the notes, you know, and how will I know what note to come in on? Because when I was doing pantomime, I had to sing Another Bride, Another June. And I'd say to the pianist, I don't want a chord, just hit the note, you know, like your magic Z key. And so the cast used to get together with them, and instead of giving me a C or a B or whatever it was, they would pay the pianist or get him drunk enough to play other notes. And so I was like, this is where Jimmy James got his act from. I used to go like, oh, no. Oh, it's agony. So I was... Anyway, it all started, actually, in this studio.
Really?
About 16 months ago, so Andrew Lloyd Webber tells me, when he asked me to do it, I said, what makes you think I can sing? And he said, Trevor and I saw you on the Dame Edna show. And I said, but I sang with Dennis Healy, and they said, that's who we wanted. There's the answer to the question. I can't sing. What the hell am I doing? You know,
I think Dennis Healy should have got Phantom of the Opera about that.
Exactly. No, but I tell you what, it doesn't matter whether I sing or not in it. I'm surrounded by such wonderful, young, talented singers. The new big heartthrob of the West End, whose name is obviously going to be bigger than mine, Michael Ball.
But let's just talk about the challenge, perhaps, that the role in this musical offers you. Because, I mean, it's a change of direction, isn't it?
Well, it's frightening. It's a frightening change of direction. My first reaction was when Andrew called me and wanted to speak about it. I was extremely flattered. I mean, it's like Verdi calling up an old actor and sort of saying, come and do an opera. And I thought it would go away. I said, well, I'm going to California, and I'll take the book along and I'll read it. And when I come back in a few weeks, I'll sit down with the piano and we'll see whether I can sing. And I came back and I thought, well, maybe they've forgotten me. They won't call, and they did. And I went off and I started singing and learning songs. And then there was a tremendous silence while he and Trevor Nunn went off, and they sort of looked at every other 60-year-old actor in America and Scotland. Sean wouldn't do it. So they came back, and it happened to be on a day when there wasn't too much snow in Switzerland, where I live, and I couldn't go skiing, and here I am.
And are you going to have lessons, or have you been having singing lessons?
Oh, yes, I'm working with a voice coach, Ian Adam, who worked with Sarah Brightman and with Michael Crawford. And I trust him implicitly. He says, yes, I'll be able to do it. Today, he had me doing an absolutely wonderful thing when I said, I can't do it, I can't. It sounds absolutely awful. He says, you want to hear it? He says, lie on the floor. And so, did you know this trick? You lie on the floor with your head on the floor and you sing into the carpet.
Do you want to do that? I mean, it's always
no,
a fairly good carpet.
I haven't told Trevor Nunn yet this is the way I want to play the whole show. Singing into the carpet.
I'm not paying good money to see you sing into the carpet.
Did you have lessons, Robert, for some of the music? I mean, early on in your career?
Yes, I mean, I still do. I mean, well, at the moment I've stopped, but I think when you go into a show, you've obviously got to get back and readjust the old chords and that. That. Not that.
And Bridget, have you ever had any lessons, coaching for singing?
A couple, but mostly when I was singing in church. Whereas
what we saw, the clip, you weren't singing in church. Don't see choir boys coming off taking the biggest stratas off it.
That is show.
Looked good to me. I wish I could.
Actually, wasn't there a nude scene planned for you as well?
Well, I was supposed to be sitting in a bath, which is fine, you know, if you figure only people are sitting in the front row of the stores, but there are people sitting up there. And I started worrying about what the hell you have on in the bath. I mean, soap suds go so far.
And then once you use the soap, then they just disappear.
Exactly. Well, they'd have put fairy liquid in for me, I suppose.
So that's been cut from the show now?
Yes, it was just physically impossible to be naked and wet in 1 second. And in the show there are 61 scenes. And it moves, and it will have a very cinematic technique, you know, wipes and quick dissolves, and you're just going from one place to the other. So you couldn't really be fully dressed in 2 seconds. So I'm delighted to say it's gone. I have a much better scene in its place.
But Bridget, you've obviously had to take your clothes off on many an occasion for photographs?
Oh, yeah. But I don't mind.
Did you never mind taking them off?
Well, the first time I did it, I didn't mind. If not, I wouldn't have agreed to it. I did a layout for Playboy, and where I come from, which is Denmark, we walk topless on the beaches, and it's just, it doesn't bother me. It's completely natural to me. It is, like the first time I came to America, I was walking on the beach topless, and somebody says, hey, look, this is not allowed here. And I said, well, you know, in the south of France, that's the way you do it. And the layouts that I've done is nice layouts, and they've mainly been topless.
So you don't regret any of those?
No, absolutely not.
It's perfectly all right to be topless here. We don't mind, do we?
But Robert's worried about all his sort of topless and frontless photographs, aren't you?
I'm the only man I know arrested for indecent exposure and let off for lack of evidence.
Hold it for Goldie. Oh, thank you.
Actually, Roger, were you ever asked in any of your films or for photographs to remove the clothing?
When I first took over Bond, Helen Gurley Brown of Cosmopolitan wrote to Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, who then produced the Bond films together. And she thought, because they'd just started having centrefold nudes, they'd had Burt Reynolds and somebody else, and she thought it would be a good idea if I did a centrefold naked, but covering, you know, sort of, as she suggested, with a Walther PPK. And I said, not even a Thompson submachine gun. I was always very modest.
Of course. That's great. But, you know, thinking about some of the romantic clinches on screen. Now, you see, if I were married to you, Roger, and if I had to stand and watch you in all those passionate clinches, I'd be so jealous. Does your Louisa not get jealous?
Well, she's Italian. Italians are never jealous. You know, she'd say, I'd go off, you know, and she would look at the script and say, you were working with today, and what do you do? And I said, you know, her. Uh-huh. And I said, I wouldn't come to the studio today, you know, I'm in bed with so-and-so. She said, I understand, and you have to do this, but don't enjoy it.
Thinking of the Italian temperament, when you first met Louisa, I mean, presumably you didn't really speak each other's languages very well. So did she understand your sense of humour and what you were saying to her?
Well, I suppose she thought I was intelligent because she didn't understand what I was talking.
You would be used to the Italian temperament as well, Richard. Do you speak the language?
Yes, I do. Parliamo italiano, Roger.
Come no?
Allora, così non capisci nessuno
Sì,
qui.
sì. Allora, noi andiamo dopo.
I think you're missing out there somewhere, Robert, aren't you?
No, posso avere il conto, per favore?
Ma come no? 5 milioni,
She doesn't know that I just asked for the bill.
5 million.
Well, perhaps actually, in the end, bearing in mind that this musical aspect of love opens fairly soon, you might even have some tips, you know, Robert, to pass on to Roger. What do you think?
Yeah, how do I get in?
You can, if you're related to me.
But, you know, when you think of this discipline, you see here, you're starting now on, what, 8 performances a week. It's a totally new discipline, isn't it?
I'm trying to forget about that. That won't start till April. No, it is. The discipline is the one thing that has worried me. It's 34 years since I appeared in the West End
How
on
many
the
shows
stage.
a week are you going to do?
8.
You're doing 8 shows?
Yeah.
It's tough. The midweek matinee is the killer.
I don't
Stick with
think
films.
Roger wanted to hear this, by the way.
No, I didn't. I didn't want. I just thought. Well, I thought that maybe after sort of Tuesday they could put the LP on and show photographs.
Well, Roger, you might be able to squeeze 3 tickets for us anyway. To
I
go and
sure
see it.
can. You will always be welcome.
Well, I'd like to thank you all very much indeed. It's been really entertaining. So, ladies and gentlemen, Roger Moore.